Hello everyone and welcome back to Byju's and welcome to another lecture on governance. Now in this video we will be studying about accountability. Now what does accountability mean? Responsibility, liability of sorts. So obligation of those holding power to take responsibility and be held answerable for their behavior, for their actions, for their inactions. So this is what is called accountability. A very, very important idea with respect to governance is the concept of accountability, because the government, the bureaucrats have been given immense powers. The executive practically runs the country. In the Ram Javaya Kapoor case, Supreme Court had mentioned this, that if you take away legislative functions, if you take away judicial functions, whatever remains in the country, be it foreign policy, be it maintenance of law and order, be it social welfare, economic welfare, and also initiating policies, bringing about policies, getting the laws passed, everything has been given to the executive. Everything is the responsibility of the executive. And in the Ram Javaya Kapoor, 1955, this is what Supreme Court iterated. So, considering the amount of power that has been given to the executive, it is imperative that we should hold them accountable. There should be a mechanism in place to hold these bodies, these people accountable, responsible for their actions, inactions, hold them liable for their actions or even inactions. Now, let us also delve deeper and find out what are the various forms of accountability. So, there are two forms, external and internal. When it comes to external forms of accountability, the primary body is the parliament. It holds the executive accountable, it holds the executive responsible, and elections. The elections that take place after every 5 years are primarily the most important external mechanism to ensure the accountability of the executive. There are also some internal mechanisms like the CAG, the Comptroller and Auditor General, the post about which we are going to study. Then Lokpal and Lokayukt. We had the Lokpal and Lokayukt Act of 2013 that was passed to create the Lokpal for the center and to give guidelines for the states to have their own Lokayukt. Even though the states have, in fact, primarily all the states, if not all, most of the states had a Lokayukt in place even before this law was passed. But then to arrive at a common ground for all the states, the Lokpal and the Lokayukt Act of 2013. Then bodies like CBI, bodies like CVC. We also have the Whistleblowers Act. So all these are internal forms of accountability, holding the people accountable, holding them responsible. So in pursuance of this, let's now discuss the first body, that is the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Now, Dr. Ambedkar has said that there are 4 pillars of the Indian Constitution. The 4 pillars are the Supreme Court, the Election Commission of India, the UPSC, and the CAG, the Comptroller and Auditor General. Now, what exactly do you mean by audit? What is audit? Audit means examination of financial records. So, whatever money has been spent by a particular body is examined for the correctness, maybe technical irregularities could be found, or siphoning of funds could be found, or mismanagement of resources could also be found. So to manage all these things, to examine all these financial records of a company or corporation, that exercise is called audit. And who is this person, comptroller? Comptroller is a person who audits government accounts, meaning all the expenditure that is done by the government is audited by this particular body. And as I was saying that Dr. Ambedkar has termed CAG as one of the pillars of the Constitution. And interestingly, if you see all other bodies, Supreme Court, a multi-member body, there are at present 34 judges, including the Chief Justice of India. The Election Commission of India, it's a 3-member body. The UPSC, it has 11 members. All these bodies are multi-member bodies, but CAG is the only pillar which is a single member body. There is just one Comptroller and Auditor General of India. And mind you, this is a constitutional body. Fines are mentioned under Article 148. And then Articles 149, 150, 151 deal with the powers and functions of the CAG. So CAG is present under Part 5 of the Indian Constitution, under Articles 148 to 151, a constitutional body. The website for CAG is cag.gov.in. And the current CAG is a 1985 batch IAS officer from the Gujarat cadre, G.C. Murmu, Girish Chand Murmu. Now, first things first, when it comes to the CAG heads a department, or rather a services, called the Indian Audit and Accounts Services. Now, this service is amongst the list of all the services that you find when you appear for the civil services examination. The CAG is the head of this Audit and Accounts Services, or the Audit and Accounts Department. And to support the CAG, we also have some deputy CAGs. As of now, we have 8 deputy CAGs, and we have few additional deputy CAGs in the department. So currently we have 11 additional deputy CAGs. So this is roughly about the IAAS and the CAG. Now coming to the first aspect of the IAAS. Now the Indian Audit and Accounts Department is headed by the CAG. The CAG acts as the head of this department. In fact, if you pick and choose any department, any ministry, that is eventually headed by a minister. It is the minister who acts as the CEO of sorts of all these organs of the government called the ministries, the portfolios. So the minister is at the top, and the minister gives directions to all the bureaucrats under him, starting from the secretary, the additional secretary, the joint secretaries, the deputy secretaries, and the under secretaries. All these IAS officers in a decreasing hierarchy. And then you have section officers, you have assistants, you have upper division clerks, the lower division clerks, and the daftaris, peons, safai karamcharis, so on and so forth. All the departments are under some minister, but the Indian Audit and Accounts Department is the only department which is headed not by a minister, but by an independent constitutional post, that is the CAG. So such is the importance, such is the independence that has been granted to this body and this person. Now, in pursuance of this independence, Article 148 lists various provisions which are there to further ensure the independence of the CAG. All these are various clauses under Article 148. What are these? First things first, the CAG may be appointed by the President. We agree that this may not be really something which could hold independence for the CAG, but you may appoint the CAG. The removal is in the like manner and on like grounds as the judge of the Supreme Court of India. Now see, when I say the CAG is appointed by the President, we mean as per Article 74, the CAG is appointed by the President on the advice, the binding advice of Council of Ministers. The government does appoint the CAG. But when it comes to removing the person, the manner followed in the removal of the Supreme Court judges, the reasons for the removal of Supreme Court judges are the ones that apply to the CAG. The reasons are on grounds of incapacity and misbehavior, and the manner is mentioned in the Judges Inquiry Act. You require a special majority in the Parliament, and it is only with this special majority that you can remove the CAG. This special majority means at least 2/3 present and voting and more than 50% of the total strength of the House. That's a very huge majority. So the appointment, yes, is at the hands of the executive, but the removal, not so much. The removal is very, very difficult, and to top it all, it has been given to the Parliament. First aspect to ensure independence. The next one is that the salary of CAG, like most of the popular and the important constitutional dignitaries, is not to be varied to his disadvantage after appointment. Meaning, whatever salary has been given to the CAG at the time of joining the services, whatever salary has been promised to the person, will be the salary which will be given to the person till the time he retires from that particular post. You can't reduce the salary of the CAG while he or she is in office. Then, to also ensure that the CAG does not curry any favors for the government, that he acts in an unbiased and impartial manner, the CAG is not eligible for further reappointment. There is no scope for reappointing this person to any government post, whether under the government of India or under the government of a state. Now, there is a small issue here. Way back, around 9 to 10 years back, we had a very famous CAG, Vinod Rai. I am sure you have heard of this person's name. Vinod Rai was a retired IAS officer from the Kerala cadre, and he was made the CAG by the then UPA government in the late 2000s. And it was this Vinod Rai who, through his aggressive auditing, brought to light the coal allocation scam, the 2G spectrum scam, the Commonwealth Games scam, the Adarsh Society scam, and all these exposés eventually resulted in the demise of the Congress. The perception that was created in the minds of people of the government being extremely corrupt was because of the aggressive auditing by the CAG Vinod Rai. Now, once the CAG demitted office, Shashikant Sharma became the new CAG. But in 2015-16, the BJP government, which came to power, the NDA government, it wanted to revamp the banking sector. And in this process, they had tried to come up with something called the Indradhanush program. Now, it is not the same in the Dhanush as the mission in Dhanush for vaccinations. No. This was a 7-point strategy, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, to improve upon the banking sector to deal with the twin balance sheet problem of the banks. Now, amongst various steps that the government was supposed to take, on the recommendation of one P.J. Nayak committee, a Bank Board Bureau, BBB, was to be set up. The body still functions, and it was a task of this BBB, the Bank's Board Bureau, to make recommendations for the appointment of top posts in all the public sector banks. Even though this body was just a recommendatory body, it did not have powers to appoint the person. But importantly, this chairperson had been given a very, very important task to make recommendations. Now, when the BBB was first formed, Vinod Rai was made the chairperson. This was challenged in the court, saying, how could you appoint CAG to any post? As per the provisions of Article 148, Clause 4, the CAG is not eligible for further reappointment. So this matter was challenged in the court. Even though the tenure of Vinod Rai has come to an end, now Bhan Pratap Sharma is the chairperson of the Bank Board's Bureau, yet another IAS officer, or retired IAS officer of the DOPT. He was the secretary in the Department of Personnel and Training. So Vinod Rai does not hold the office now, but the matter is still pending in the court, whether the appointment of Vinod Rai as the chairperson of BBB was ultra vires clause 4 of Article 148 or not. But in all likelihood, and what has been the case in the past shows that generally CAGs are kept aloof, and they themselves choose to remain aloof from any kind of political appointments, at least as far as once they have demitted the office of CAG is concerned. So the CAG is not eligible for further reappointment, and coming to the case of Vinod Rai, the matter is still in the court, and we'll have to wait for the Supreme Court to pronounce a verdict whether the appointment was appropriate or not. It can act as a limitation on the future governments to ensure that the post of CAG is not politicized. Then the salary of CAG, just like the salary of the president, the salary of the vice president, the salary of the speaker, the salary of the deputy speaker, the salary of the chairpersons of Rajya Sabha, deputy chairpersons of Rajya Sabha, the salary of judges of Supreme Court, just like all of them, the salary of the CAG is also charged expenditure. Meaning what? This means that the salary of the CAG will not be voted upon in the parliament. It can only be discussed in the parliament, and no modifications are allowed when the charged expenditure is put to vote when the budget is being passed. So the salary is charged expenditure. Now, not just the CAG, the entire department, the Indian Audit and Accounts Department, the entire department, the conditions of service and other terms and conditions are all prescribed by the President only after consulting the CAG. So, the Constitution does not only ensure that the CAG is independent, it also tries to ensure the independence of the entire department. There is hardly any interaction between the government and the officials of IAAD. Why? Because of the nature of functions, tasks they are expected to perform. Auditing the entire expenditure, every single penny that the government spends, and finding out if there is any fraud that has been committed, finding out if misappropriation of funds have taken place, finding out if the policies have been devised in such a manner to benefit only a few. So, the nature of functions which we are going to see shortly is such that the department and the CAG have to be independent. So this is as far as the independence of the CAG is concerned. Now, coming to the conditions of service. There is a law passed in a country called the CAG Duties, Powers and Conditions of Service Act 1971, popularly called the CAG DPC Act. Now, under the CAG DPC Act, we find the mention of the tenure of CAG, which is 6 years, the retirement age of CAG, which is 65 years, whichever is earlier, either a tenure of 6 years or the age of 65, and the salary of CAG, which is same as Supreme Court judge, which is currently 2.5 lakh rupees per mensum or per month. Now mind you, in these recent times, at least for the past 3-4 years, we have been witnessing, at least in the prelims, that UPSC has been asking questions with respect to the Constitution of India. They specifically write the statement, as per the provisions of the Constitution. As per the Constitution provides for. So if they ask you a question, a statement which says the Constitution provides for the salary of CAG to be the same salary as drawn by Supreme Court judge, that would be incorrect. The statement is correct, but the provisions of tenure, the provisions of retirement age, and the provisions of salary, these are not mentioned in the Constitution. They are mentioned where? In the CAG DPC Act 1971. So we have to always make sure, at least, as to what provisions are mentioned in the Constitution and what are not. So just some other important points for you to keep in mind. Now coming to the functions of this body. Since we have been talking about the CAG, we have also discussed why it is, and rather what are those avenues which ensure the independence of CAG. It's high time that we also focus on the functions. Why do we need an independent CAG? What is the nature of functions that this body performs? So first things first, it audits and reports all the expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India, Consolidated Fund of the states, the public accounts of India and the state, as well as the contingency fund of both center and the states. So basically, all these funds that are mentioned under Article 266, Clause 1, Clause 2 and 267. The CFI, the CFS, the PAI and the contingency funds for the center and the states. Every penny that the government, state or center spends from these accounts is audited, is examined by the CAG, and the reports are submitted to the President and the governors respectively. Now, just to clarify at this very point, the CAG and the department IAAS, the services or the department IAAD, their task is to audit the accounts of the central government. Now, till 1976, the task of the CAG was not only to audit but also to maintain the accounts of both the center as well as the states, even maintenance along with the audit. In 1976, a separate department was created. The departmentalization of services happened. A new service was created called the ICAS. This is the Indian Civil Accounts Services. This is also a service in the list of services for which you are preparing right now. This ICAS is headed by the Controller General of Accounts, And this ICAS is actually under the Department of Expenditure in the Ministry of Finance. So, 1976 onwards, the task of maintaining the account for the center was given to ICAS, and it is the ICAS which has since 1976 been maintaining the accounts of the central government, which is later on audited by the IAAS, the Indian Audit and Accounts Services. But when it comes to the maintenance of accounts of the respective state governments, the CAG still performs that function. It is the IAAS which continues to maintain the accounts for the states. And interestingly, when it comes to maintenance of accounts for the states, the biggest and the most important point to be observed here is that the few states, say Goa or the UTs of Delhi and Puducherry, are the only ones which have their own account maintenance, or rather which maintain the accounts on their own. Otherwise, CAG and IAAS maintains the accounts for all the states, and they also audit the account for states and the center. Now it is quite logical, quite rational for you to ask a question as to why. Why don't states also create a separate body to maintain the accounts? Now states feel that if we create our own body, we'll have to do the hiring, we'll have to hire more people, pay them salaries, perks, allowances, pensions later on. It will be an added expenditure. Let the CAG, let the IAAS maintain the accounts. Why do you need to create a separate service for that? So, in order to save money, the states continue to let the CAG and the department maintain the accounts. Otherwise, the moment ICAS was formed, it was definitely an added burden on the exchequer. Now the central government has to pay salary to all these employees, allowances, pensions, quotas, staff, all these things have to be paid. States want to save themselves from this kind of payment. As it is, the states are always running short of funds. They're always found to be begging from the center for funds. They try to find out ways to minimize the expenditures. This is one more way how they feel that their expenditures can be minimized. So, they have not gone ahead and they have had no interest in creating their own maintenance of account mechanism. Right? Okay. Now, function number 2. It also audits and reports on all the trading, manufacturing, profit and loss accounts that any department of the union or the state keeps. All such possible accounts that these state and central departments keep. Then to audit stocks and stores, the inventories. Suppose the state government says we have to now give computers to all the kids who are in schools. Let's say there's a scheme, laptop distribution scheme, to all the kids between 6 to 14. Now when these laptops are purchased, they have to be firstly kept in some warehouse. They have to be stored somewhere. And then step by step, in tranches, these laptops will be given to various kids through various schools. So these storehouses, these warehouses, these places where the stocks are kept can also be audited by the CAG and the team. So, to audit the stocks and the stores. Then, to audit all the organizations, each and every organization which is substantially financed by the government. And the CAG and the department can also audit those organizations which are not financed by the government. For example, let's say there is some chit fund company and now it has been found that that chit fund company has been involved in siphoning of funds. That chit fund company was possibly running some kind of a Ponzi scheme. What is the Ponzi scheme? The Ponzi scheme is you take money from few people and you promise them to double the amount, just like Anuradha did to Akshay Kumar and Sunil Shetty. And once you promise them the doubling of their amount, what you do is you now go and take money from the third person and you give the first person double the money. And this is how you generate respect and guarantee of your scheme. And now as more and more people keep on giving you money, you return money, doubling the money for few, and you eventually at one point of time take away the rest. So that's what's a classic Ponzi scheme. So suppose there's a chit fund company which had collected money from people and which has now been charged with or accused of running a Ponzi scheme of sorts. Misappropriation of funds of people. This could be a private company, a cooperative. If the governor asks the CAG, if the president requests the CAG, then the CAG can also audit those companies, those organizations which are not financed by the government. So the CAG can also audit private companies, but the governor or the president has to ask the CAG to do so. Then the CAG also advises the format in which the union and the states should maintain their accounts. That's also one function of the CAG under Article 150, Article 150. Then CAG also audits the accounts of all the public sector undertakings and all the government companies. Now, understand a very important concept here. Net proceeds. What do you mean by net proceeds of taxes? Let's say the government, the central government, has collected 100 rupees as taxes. Out of this 100 rupees, say the Finance Commission says that please give 41% to the states and you can keep the rest. Or let's assume the recommendation is that you give 40% to states and the rest can be kept with the center. So let's assume for easy calculations that this is the recommendation given by the Finance Commission. Now the central government imposes taxes through the finance bill in the budget, the income tax, corporation tax, so on and so forth. It collects money and let's assume 100 rupees has been collected by the central government. Out of this 100, center keeps 60% and the states are given 40%. But that is not how the funds are to be distributed. Net funds are distributed. What is net? Now when the government, the central government, imposes these taxes, it collects these taxes, some money is also spent on collecting taxes, giving the salaries for the IRS officers, maintenance of buildings, the departments, the paperwork, maintaining a website, photocopy machine, printers, so on and so forth. So some money is also invested by the government into collecting taxes. That money should ideally be reduced. Let's say in collecting taxes, 20 rupees per 100 rupees goes away. Meaning, to collect 100 rupees, the central government invests 10 rupees or 20 rupees. This means, what is the net tax collected? 100 minus 20. This means 80 rupees is the net tax collected. So ideally, it is this 80 which should be distributed between the center and the states. So now the center gets 48 rupees. That is 60% of 80 is 48. And the states get 32 rupees. 40% of 80 is 32. Plus this 20 rupees is also given to the center. Why? Because the center spent 20 rupees in collecting taxes. So finally, center gets 68, states get 32. So center gets slightly more money compared to what it was getting earlier. Now, what if tomorrow the center says, sir, the costs have increased so much. The photocopying machine is very costly now. The printing cost has increased. The people are demanding more salaries. The internet prices have increased. We had to top up our internet again and again, right? So now the collection of taxes has become costly. We are investing 40 rupees into collecting taxes. So we can only share 60 rupees. 100 rupees total taxes collected minus 40. So now the center says, sir, we can only distribute 60 rupees because we are investing 40 in collecting taxes. Now, center gets how much? 60% of 60 is 36 plus the 40 that it claims to have spent in collecting taxes. That means now the center gets 76 rupees, whereas the states will get 40% of the 60, that is just 24 rupees. Don't you think it is beneficial for the center to inflate this cost of collecting taxes? The higher the cost, the lesser the net, and lesser will be the amount that the center is now bound to give to the states. But this will not be allowed. Why? Because whatever is the claim that the center makes, whether it's 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 30 rupees, whatever, the certificate of net proceeds is given by the CAG. It is verified by the CAG whether the claim of the center to having spent this much of money on a certain amount or of having spent money on collecting taxes, is it correct or not? So, under Article 279 Clause 1, the CAG is the body which certifies that yes, the amount you are claiming to have invested in collecting taxes is appropriate. So the center cannot inflate the cost of collecting taxes and cannot divide the states of their due share. That is also one of the responsibilities of the CAG. Now, apart from it, some other functions like the CAG also helps the Finance Commission in acquiring an informed opinion on the state government's finances. How? The task of the Finance Commission, a constitutional body under Article 280, is what? Is to not only devolve or give recommendations on devolution of taxes from center to states, but also to distribute taxes amongst the states, depending on each and every state's performance of functions and other parameters. Now, the Finance Commission may not really be aware whether a particular state is wasting money or not. Let's say UP government says to the Finance Commission that, sir, we want more funds, please increase our share in the devolution of taxes from the last time, because we have been spending so much money on welfare schemes, we have been spending so much money on upliftment of the poor that we are in dire need of money. Now, the CAG is the body which is constantly auditing the UP government's accounts. It knows very well whether the UP government has been wasting money or utilizing money properly. So, the Finance Commission can also seek advice from the CAG. It can call up the CAG and say, sir, UP government says that we need more funds. How have they been managing the funds? Have they been spending it properly, or are they spending the funds on just SOPs, free subsidies for vote bank politics? The CAG, because of the fact that they have been auditing each and every expenditure, can provide a very genuine and appropriate input to the Finance Commission with respect to state government's finances. So the Finance Commission also takes the help of the CAG in acquiring an informed opinion on what is happening in the state governments with respect to maintenance of their finances, which can in turn result in an effective and a proper devolution of fund to that particular state. Then he or the CAG also acts as a friend, philosopher and guide to the most important, the oldest parliamentary committee, the Public Accounts Committee, the Committee on Public Accounts in the Parliament. Now the task of the PAC, as you are already aware, is to audit all the money, to look into all the expenditure done by the government and then make reports on that and table those reports in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. These reports can in turn result in informed debates taking place in the Parliament on how the government has been spending money in the last 1 year. The CAG advises, helps the PAC, the Committee on Public Accounts, in understanding how, when, where the money is being spent because of the expertise of the CAG. So the PAC also is a beneficiary of the expertise of the CAG. And every year, the CAG submits 3 reports to the President of India. The audit report on the appropriation accounts. Appropriation means to withdraw funds. Audit report on finance accounts and audit report on public sector undertakings. So every year, it's mandatory for the CAG to submit all these 3 reports. And the President lays down these reports in the Parliament, and after that the PAC, the Public Accounts Committee, examines these reports and report their findings to the Parliament, where detailed discussions can take place and the government can be held accountable if any wastage of resources is found to have taken place. So these are the very important functions of the CAG. Now obviously, CAG and the department is not just a handful of people. There are roughly 133 field offices of the CAG, the IAAS, across the country, with 660 plus IAAS officers, people like you. Another 47,000 plus Group B, C and D staff. So there is ample amount of staff available to manage the auditing of the states and the center. Yes, there is always going to be need for more staff, and that is why the former CAG Vinod Rai, in his book Not Just an Accountant, had beautifully pointed this out. He said that there are roughly 2.5 lakh points where the CAG and the department is supposed to audit, but every year we are only able to audit 25 to 26% of those accounts, of those points. Why? Because we still do not have the sufficient manpower. Because the expenditure of government has widened into so many arenas that we still need more people. So, like all other government departments, the IAAS also needs more people. There is shortage of staff in the IAAS as well. Okay. Now, just to give you a brief on what kind of questions have been asked in the prelims from this topic. So this was a question asked in 2001. Which one of the following duties is not performed by the CAG? Now at this point, you can pause the video and take an attempt at the question. Let's discuss. To audit and report on all expenditure from the CFI. It is performed. To audit and report on all expenditures from the contingency funds and the public accounts. This is also performed by the CAG. To audit and report on all trading, manufacturing, profit and loss accounts of the center and the states. This is also performed by the CAG. The question says not performed. This means this has to be the right answer. And what is that? To control the receipt and issue of public money. No. The CAG has no control over the receipt and issue of public money. The CAG audits the expenditure already undertaken by the government. It is the Parliament which allows the executive to spend money. It is the RBI which prints money. CAG has no role to play in the issue of public money, receipt and the control thereof. and to ensure that the public revenue is lodged in the exchequer. So this is not a function performed by CAG, and hence D is the right answer. One more question. In India, other than ensuring that public funds are used efficiently and for intended purposes, what is the importance of the office of the Comptroller and Auditor General? Number one, CAG exercises exchequer control on behalf of the Parliament when the President of India declares national emergency or a financial emergency. The CAG performs no such function. CAG has no role to play either in times of national or financial emergency. So 1 is not the answer. We can safely remove all those options which contain 1. This means 2 has to be correct, since 2 is there in both B and C, and 4 has to be wrong. Let's read 3. Information from CAG reports can be used by investigating agencies to press charges against those who have violated the law while managing public finances. Absolutely correct. It was the 2G report of the CAG wherein the CAG claimed that the government could have received 1.76 lakh crores more had they gone for something called competitive bidding and not first come, first serve. See, back in the early 2000s, the government had to auction 2G licenses. The 2G licenses, 122 new 2G licenses had to be granted to various telecoms, and the government chose to grant these licenses on the basis of 2001 prices on a first come first serve basis, meaning whoever came and applied first got the license. It's like whoever goes and fills up the form first gets the seat, or whoever reaches the examination center first gets the seat. Whereas the CAG said, if you had gone for bidding, like the bidding which takes place in the IPL, a competitive bidding, the government could have received 1.76 lakh crores more. Even though this was not proved later on, but still, CBI filed a charge sheet against certain people like A. Raja on this ground that CAG had officially published a report claiming that there were some people, some ministers, telecom minister to top it all, who had been involved in mismanagement of public finances. So, on the basis of CAG reports, the investigating agencies like CBI can very well press charges. So 3 is correct, and the moment 3 is correct, the right answer will be C, 2 and 3. Let's also read 2. 2 says, CAG reports on the execution of projects or programs by ministries are discussed by the PAC. Yes, the CAG reports are discussed by the PAC. CAG acts as a friend, philosopher and guide to the PAC. And what is 4? While dealing with the audit and accounting of government companies, CAG has certain judicial powers. CAG has no judicial powers. This statement is absolutely wrong. For prosecuting those who violate the law. No, CAG has no judicial powers. We have not seen such a function performed by CAG. So 4 is obviously incorrect. 1 and 4 are wrong. 2 and 3 are right. C is the right answer.